What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest stars walks onto a talk show and decides the rules don't apply to her? In just 31 seconds, a single comment would turn a friendly chat into the most explosive meltdown in late night history. The Graham Norton Show had seen its fair share of celebrity chaos over the years, but nothing could prepare the host, his crew, or the live studio audience for what was about to unfold when Amanda Seyfried took her seat on that famous red couch. It started like any other evening. The lights were bright, the audience was buzzing with excitement, and Graham Norton wore his signature welcoming smile as he introduced his guest lineup for the night. Amanda was scheduled to appear alongside two other actors, but from the moment she walked out, something felt different. She strutted onto the stage with an air of superiority that immediately caught everyone's attention. While the other guests had warmly shaken Graham's hand and waved to the crowd, Amanda barely acknowledged anyone. She sat down on the couch, crossed her legs, and stared at Graham with an expression that could only be described as bored impatience. Graham, ever the professional, tried to break the ice with his usual charm. "Amanda, welcome to the show. It's so lovely to have you here." She looked at him for a long moment before responding. "Is it, though?" The audience let out an uncomfortable laugh, unsure if this was a joke or genuine hostility. Graham's smile faltered for just a second before he recovered, chuckling along. "Well, I certainly think so. We've been excited to have you on. I know everyone here has been looking forward to this." Amanda glanced at the audience with what can only be described as disdain. "Really? I find that hard to believe." Graham shifted in his seat, his professional demeanor still intact, but clearly working harder now. "So, you're here to talk about your new film. I've heard wonderful things about it. Tell us about your character." Amanda sighed dramatically, as if the question was the most tedious thing she'd ever heard. "Do I have to? I mean, haven't people read about it already? What's the point of me repeating everything?" The other guests on the couch exchanged glances, their discomfort visible. The studio audience had gone completely silent. This wasn't the playful banter they were used to seeing on the show. This was something else entirely. Graham maintained his composure, as his years of experience guiding him through the awkward moment. "Well, that's generally how talk shows work, Amanda. We chat about your projects, share some laughs, and give the audience a chance to get to know you better." She rolled her eyes. "Get to know me? They don't need to know me. They just need to buy tickets to my movies." A few gasps rippled through the audience. Graham's smile had completely disappeared now, replaced by a look of genuine concern and growing frustration. "I think you might be underestimating how much people appreciate connecting with the actors they admire." Amanda leaned forward, her voice dripping with condescension. "Admire? That's a strong word. Look, Graham, let me be honest with you. I didn't really want to come on this show. My publicist made me." "Yeah, your show isn't exactly the pinnacle of late-night television, is it?" The studio fell into a shocked silence. This wasn't a joke. This wasn't playful ribbing. This was a genuine insult, delivered with cold precision. Graham took a deep breath, his face flushing slightly. "I see. Well, Amanda, I'm sorry you feel that way. But while you're here, perhaps we could try to make the best of it? For the sake of everyone who did want to see you tonight?" She laughed, but it wasn't a friendly sound. "Make the best of it? You mean pretend that sitting here answering your boring questions is somehow meaningful? Please." One of the other guests tried to intervene, attempting to lighten the mood. "Come on, Amanda. Graham's just trying to have a nice conversation." She turned on them instantly. "Nobody asked for your opinion. Why are you even here? Who are you again?" Graham had had enough. His voice remained calm, but there was steel underneath it now. "Amanda, I'm going to have to ask you to be respectful. Not just to me, but to my other guests, and to everyone in this audience." She stood up abruptly. "Respectful? You want to talk to me about respect? Do you know who I am? Do you know how many films I've been in? how much money I've made, and you want me to sit here and be grateful for the opportunity to be on your little show? Graham stood as well, his patience finally exhausted. Yes, Amanda, I do know who you are. But right now, the person I'm seeing is someone who walked onto my show, insulted me, insulted my guests, and insulted every single person who came here tonight to see you. And that's not okay. She scoffed. Oh, please. You're just mad because I'm not playing along with your pathetic attempts at humor. Your questions are basic. Your show is basic. You're basic. The audience began to boo. It started quietly, but quickly grew louder. Amanda looked around, seemingly shocked that people weren't on her side. Graham's voice cut through the noise. I think it's time for you to leave, Amanda. She laughed again, that same cold, mirthless sound. Excuse me? You're kicking me off your show? Yes, I am. I've been doing this for a long time, and I've never had to do this before. But I won't have you treating people this way. Not here. Her face flushed with anger. You can't kick me off. Do you have any idea what this will do to you? To your show? I have millions of fans. They'll destroy you for this. Graham stood his ground, his voice steady and firm. Then they'll destroy me. But I'd rather that than sit here and watch you belittle everyone in this room. You need to go. She grabbed her purse from beside the couch, her movements sharp and aggressive. Fine. I didn't want to be here anyway. This show is beneath me. You're all beneath me. Security will show you out, Graham said calmly. Amanda's eyes widened. Security? You're having me escorted out by security? Yes. I want to make sure you leave without causing any more disruption. She took a step toward Graham, her finger pointing accusingly at him. This is unbelievable. You have no idea what you've just done. No idea. I could ruin you with one phone call. Graham didn't flinch. Then make the call, Amanda, but do it from outside my studio. 2 security guards appeared at the edge of the stage. They didn't touch her, but stood waiting, making it clear that she needed to leave. For a moment, it looked like Amanda might refuse. She stood there, trembling with rage, staring at Graham as if she couldn't believe this was actually happening. You're a joke, she spat. This whole show is a joke, and everyone watching at home will know it once I tell them my side of the story. Graham remained calm, though his hands were clenched at his sides. You're welcome to tell whatever story you want, but right now, you need to leave. She turned to the audience, seeming to expect some kind of support or sympathy. Instead, she was met with more boos and a few people actually standing and pointing toward the exit. You're all pathetic, she yelled. Every single one of you. The security guards moved closer. One of them spoke quietly. Ma'am, we need you to come with us now. She whirled around, nearly stumbling in her high heels. Don't touch me. I'm leaving. I don't need you to escort me anywhere. But the guards followed her anyway, keeping a professional distance as she stormed toward the exit. She moved quickly, her heels clicking loudly on the studio floor, the sound echoing in the stunned silence. Just before she reached the door that would take her backstage, she turned back one final time. You'll regret this, Graham Norton. I promise you that. Graham's response was simple and dignified. The only regret I have is that our audience had to witness this. Now please, leave. She disappeared through the door, the security guards right behind her. For several seconds, nobody in the studio moved or spoke. The shock of what had just happened hung in the air like smoke. Finally, Graham turned back to the audience and his remaining guests. He took a deep breath and straightened his jacket. Well, he said, his voice a bit shaky but trying for humor. That was unexpected. The audience erupted in applause. They weren't clapping for the drama or the conflict. They were clapping for Graham, for the way he'd handled an impossible situation with grace and firmness. One of the other guests spoke up. Graham, I am so sorry you had to deal with that. That was completely out of line. Graham shook his head. It's not your fault, and I'm sorry to everyone here who came expecting a fun evening. This isn't what we're about. The audience applauded again, even louder this time. Someone shouted, "We love you, Graham!" and others joined in with similar sentiments. Graham sat back down, gesturing for his other guests to do the same. "Right. Well, shall we try to salvage what's left of the show? I promise the rest of you are much more pleasant company." Everyone laughed, the tension finally breaking. But even as the show continued, even as Graham interviewed his other guests with his usual wit and warmth, the shadow of what had happened lingered. Backstage, Amanda was apparently causing even more chaos. Members of the production team would later describe her screaming at anyone who came near her, demanding to speak to lawyers, threatening to sue everyone involved. She refused to leave the building for almost 20 minutes, forcing security to stand guard at the stage door to prevent her from trying to get back on set. When she finally did leave, she slammed the door so hard that people on the other side of the building heard it. Back on stage, Graham was wrapping up his interview with another guest, laughing at a funny story, doing his best to give the audience the show they'd paid to see. But there were moments when you could see the strain on his face, the exhaustion from dealing with someone so determined to cause problems. During a commercial break, he leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes briefly. A production assistant came over to check on him. "Are you okay, Graham?" He opened his eyes and nodded. "Yes, I'm fine. That was just difficult. In all my years doing this, I've never had to remove someone from the show." "You handled it perfectly. Everyone thinks so." He smiled weakly. "I just wanted to have a nice show tonight. That's all I ever want." When they came back from commercial, Graham's energy had returned. He pushed forward, determined not to let one person's terrible behavior ruin the entire evening. He joked with his guests, played silly games with the audience, and slowly but surely, the atmosphere in the studio returned to something resembling normal. People were laughing again, enjoying themselves, forgetting for moments at a time about the ugliness that had occurred earlier. But nobody who was there that night would ever fully forget it. The image of Amanda standing on that stage, pointing her finger at Graham and calling him a joke, would stay with them. So would the image of Graham, standing tall and refusing to back down, protecting the integrity of his show and the dignity of everyone in that room. As the show finally came to an end, and Graham said his goodbyes to the audience, there was an extra round of applause. People stood, clapping and cheering, showing their support not just for the show, but for the man who hosted it. Graham waved, smiled, and walked off stage. The cameras stopped rolling, the lights dimmed, and one of the most dramatic moments in talk show history was over. In his dressing room afterward, Graham sat quietly for a long time. He'd built his career on making people feel welcome, on creating an environment where celebrities could relax and be themselves. The idea that someone had come onto his show with such hostility, such entitlement, such complete disregard for basic human decency, it shook him. A producer knocked on the door. "Graham, you did the right thing. Everyone knows that." He looked up. "And I know, but it still feels awful. I never want to kick anyone off the show. That's not who we are." "You didn't have a choice. She gave you no choice." He nodded slowly. "No, she didn't. But I keep thinking, what if I'd handled it differently? What if there was something I could have said or done to turn things around?" The producer sat down across from him. "Graham, you tried. You gave her multiple chances to change course. You were professional and patient and kind. She threw it all back in your face. That's on her, not you." Deep down, Graham knew that was true. He'd done everything he could. He'd welcomed Amanda onto his show with genuine warmth. He'd tried to have a conversation with her. When she became hostile, he'd stayed calm. When she became insulting, he'd asked for respect. And when she refused, when she crossed every line there was to cross, he'd made the difficult decision to remove her. It was the right decision. But it didn't make it any easier. Graham took off his jacket and loosened his tie. He thought about all the wonderful guests he'd had over the years, the ones who'd made him laugh until he cried, the ones who'd shared touching stories that moved the entire audience, the ones who'd become friends, coming back to the show again and again because they loved the atmosphere and the genuine connection. Those were the moments that mattered. Those were the reasons he did this job. One bad experience, one difficult guest, one ugly confrontation. It couldn't erase all the good, but it would certainly be remembered. Graham stood up and looked at himself in the mirror. He looked tired, a lot older somehow than he had that morning. He splashed some water on his face and took a deep breath. Tomorrow, there would be another show. More guests, more stories, more laughter. That's what he needed to focus on. Not this. Not her. Not the anger and the ugliness. He grabbed his coat and headed for the door. As he walked through the now empty studio, past the famous red couch where so many memorable moments had happened, he allowed himself one final thought about the incident. He hoped Amanda would learn something from this. He hoped she would realize that talent and fame don't give anyone the right to treat others poorly. He hoped she would understand that respect is a two-way street, and that burning bridges rarely leads anywhere good. But whether she learned those lessons or not, it was no longer his concern. He'd done his job. He'd protected his show, his guests, and his audience. He'd stood up for what was right, even when it was uncomfortable and difficult. And at the end of the day, that was all anyone could ask. Graham Norton walked out of the studio and into the night, leaving behind one of the most shocking moments in his show's history, but taking with him the knowledge that he'd handled it with integrity and grace. The red couch sat empty under the stage lights, waiting for tomorrow's guests, waiting for the laughter and joy to return, waiting to be the setting for better moments, kinder conversations, and the genuine human connections that made the Graham Norton Show special. Because that's what the show was really about. Not the drama, not the conflict, not the headlines. It was about bringing people together, sharing stories, and finding the humor and humanity in everyday life. One person's refusal to participate in that spirit couldn't change what the show meant to millions of viewers around the world. And so the stage sat ready. The cameras waited patiently, and somewhere in the city, Graham Norton prepared himself to do it all again tomorrow. Because that's what professionals do. They show up, they do their best, and they never let one bad moment define who they are or what they stand for. The incident with Amanda Seyfried would be talked about for a long time. People would debate whether Graham had overreacted, whether he should have tried harder to smooth things over, whether kicking a guest off the show was ever justified. But those who were there, those who witnessed the full extent of her behavior, they knew the truth. Sometimes, standing up for basic decency means making hard choices. Sometimes, protecting the people in your care means saying no to someone who thinks the rules don't apply to them. And sometimes, the most professional thing you can do is refuse to tolerate unprofessional behavior. Graham Norton understood all of this. And on that night, when faced with a situation unlike any he'd encountered before, he made the choice that aligned with his values and the values of his show. It wasn't easy. It wasn't fun. But it was right. And in the end, that's what mattered most.